Morning settles quietly over the nursing home. Dew sparkles on the grass as a soft breeze nudges the porch chimes. Sitting alone on an old stone bench, Raymond Holt, 84, stares into the sky, whispering to no one in particular, "They're coming today." The helicopter always comes on July 12th. A nearby nurse chuckles softly and shakes her head. There he goes again. Colonel Delusional's back on duty. For over a decade, Raymond has repeated the same ritual. Dressed in uniform, eyes to the sky, waiting. People laughed, called him delusional. But then, at exactly 2 a.m., the ground began to tremble. A black helicopter emerged from the darkness, blades roaring, descending fast through the night. And the unthinkable happened. Orders long forgotten were finally answered. Inside Rosefield Nursing Home, life moved with quiet routine. The television played old reruns no one really watched, and soft piano music trickled from a speaker in the corner. Most residents slept through the day or shuffled slowly down the halls with walkers and wheelchairs. But one man stood out, not because he was loud, but because he always sat in silence, facing the eastern sky. Raymond Holt, 84, spoke very little unless asked, but when he did, it was always about the same thing, the mission that never ended. Every morning he folded his blanket with military precision, laced his shoes tightly, and sat upright in the dining hall. He didn't eat much. Mostly he waited, and sometimes he talked, not to the staff, but to the empty chair across from him. "You know," he'd whisper to the air, "if Phantom Echo had gone through the original corridor, we would have cut 5 hours off evac time. Johnson never trusted that terrain." No one ever answered him. No one ever asked. The other residents avoided him. Even the more patient staff often rolled their eyes when his name came up on the schedule. They'd seen the same behavior before. Mild dementia, old memories merging with dreams. He wasn't dangerous, just harmless and fading. Some days Raymond would take his tea, always black, no sugar, and slowly swirl it across the wooden table with a spoon. Then with surprising steadiness, he'd use the wet stain to draw tactical diagrams. Arrows, circles, call signs, code numbers, like a general still commanding a field no one else could see. When a nurse once tried to wipe the table before he finished, he calmly placed his hand over the swirl and said, "You don't erase live orders, ma'am." To most, he was sweet but gone. Some even joked about calling him Colonel T-Map, but there was one person who didn't laugh. Emma, a 28-year-old nurse in her first year at Rosefield, had a different reaction. At first, she found Raymond strange, like everyone else. But something about the detail in his voice, the precision of his terms, the conviction behind his tired eyes. It got to her. She started watching him, quietly from the hallway, from behind a cart. She noticed how he always checked the clock at 2 a.m., like he was waiting for something, or someone. One afternoon, as she handed him his medication, she casually asked, "What was Phantom Echo, Mr. Holt?" Raymond looked at her, surprised but not suspicious. He tapped 2 fingers against his temple. "It's what you call a standing order, one you don't cancel. You just wait until someone answers it." Emma didn't know what to say, but that night she went home and typed "Phantom Echo Military Operation" into a search bar. Nothing came up. Absolutely nothing. And somehow, that unsettled her more than if it had. The next morning, Emma brought Raymond his tea and quietly slid into the seat across from him. She didn't speak right away, just watched him trace a familiar pattern onto the tabletop with the bottom of his cup. A circle, 2 arrows, a crosshatched line. "You draw that a lot," she finally said. "What does it mean?" Raymond didn't look up. His voice was steady, low. "Echo 7, drop zone, secondary evac route, and fallback point if communication goes dark." Emma tilted her head. "Echo 7, that was your unit?" He nodded. For the first time, he looked directly at her, his eyes sharp beneath the haze of age. Not confused, not fragile, just quiet, measured. "We weren't official, not on any payroll, not in any archive you'll find. We existed between the briefings and the denials. That's how they liked it." Emma's eyebrows drew together. "So what were you doing?" Raymond leaned back slightly, folding his hands. "Mountain sector, off any civilian grid. Operation name was Null Mirror. Objective: intercept an asset before it crossed into unauthorized territory. Intel said 2 days. It lasted 12. We were given standing orders that were never rescinded. No home base, no final salute, just static. Emma tried to process his words. It sounded too detailed to be invented, but too erased to be verified. So what happened? He hesitated. We completed the mission, extracted the package, but when we requested pickup, no response. It was like we didn't exist anymore. Our call signs were silent. Our clearance revoked in real time. Everyone else scattered, changed names, left the country. Me? He looked down. I waited. Emma's voice softened. Waited for what? Orders, closure, proof that we weren't just a ghost story someone wanted buried. A breeze stirred the curtains behind them. Raymond's eyes returned to the window. Every year, same day, same time, I put on the uniform just in case the signal comes through, just in case someone remembers. Emma looked at him more carefully now. His uniform jacket was old but clean, pressed. The insignia still gleamed faintly, hand-polished. His shoes were shined, even if the soles were cracked. This wasn't the ritual of a delusional man. It was the discipline of someone who believed his duty was still active. You think they'll come? She asked quietly. Raymond didn't answer right away. Then he smiled. Thin, tired, but sure. 1 year the right ears will be listening, and when they are, I want to be ready. Emma sat still. For the first time, she wasn't sure if what she'd assumed was a gentle kind of madness might be something else entirely. Conviction, memory, a war that never ended. Not in Raymond's mind, but in the silence left behind by a mission that was never truly closed. And now she realized he wasn't just waiting for a helicopter. He was waiting to be remembered. By the third day, things started to feel off. Emma had told no one about her conversation with Raymond. She couldn't explain why, but a part of her didn't want to see it dismissed. Yet when a strange email arrived at the front desk, an untraceable message with no subject line, no sender, and a single line of text, word spread quickly. Subject Echo 1 verified, ETA 48 hours. It was flagged as spam, then flagged again, then ignored. But Raymond saw it. Emma had left it open by accident on the admin tablet during her shift. He simply glanced at the screen, gave a small nod, and whispered, "They heard me." The next morning, the nursing home administrator, Mr. Gerald Winslow, summoned Emma to his office. His tone was polite, but firm. "We appreciate your enthusiasm for Mr. Holt," he said, gesturing to a printed copy of the strange message. "But this sort of thing can cause distress. Many of our residents suffer from varying degrees of cognitive decline, and feeding into fantasy is not therapeutic." Emma tried to explain that she hadn't told anyone else, that the message was unsolicited, untraceable, but Winslow wasn't having it. "We've contacted his next of kin," he said, "and we're scheduling a cognitive assessment." Later that day, a gray sedan pulled into the parking lot. A tall, slightly balding man in his late 40s stepped out, holding a manila folder and a skeptical expression. Marcus Holt, Raymond's nephew. He didn't come often. "Honestly," Marcus said while sipping vending machine coffee, "I thought he passed years ago. We never talked much growing up. He was my dad's older brother. Always quiet, strange. Kept a trunk in the attic no one was allowed to open. He used to sit on the porch with binoculars. Said he was scanning. For what, we never knew." He glanced around the facility. "I didn't even know he was in the military." Emma looked surprised. "He never told you?" Marcus shrugged. "There was a flag folded in a box after my dad died. I assumed it was ceremonial. No one ever mentioned deployments. Honestly, I thought he was just weird." By the evening, a geriatric psychiatrist from the city had been scheduled to visit within the week. Mr. Winslow began preparing documentation for a formal capacity evaluation. "If he's showing signs of delusion and paranoia," he said, "we need to make sure he's not a danger to himself or others." Emma listened in silence. That night, she stood in the hallway as Raymond shuffled past her in uniform, slow but composed. He gave her a respectful nod. "Don't worry," he said, almost cheerfully. "They'll see. They always do." right before the blades cut the dark, and then he moved past her, step by step, toward the end of the corridor, toward the place where no one was listening yet. That night, as rain tapped softly against the windows, Emma found herself once again sitting across from Raymond in the dimly lit lounge. No one else was awake. The TV was off. The lights were low. She leaned in slightly and asked, "What really happened out there with Echo 7? Raymond was silent for a moment. Then he exhaled, long and slow, and stared past her, his eyes focused on a place far beyond the walls of the nursing home. It was winter 1979. They flew us in low. No insignia, no documentation, no radio chatter. 7 men, one objective. His voice dropped into a steady rhythm, not theatrical, but military, calm and exact. The target was a rogue facility tucked deep into the northeastern ridge of enemy territory. Satellite scans picked up irregular activity, thermal signatures and material transports inconsistent with conventional weapons. Intel suspected a biological payload, viral, untraceable, uncontained. Emma didn't interrupt. We weren't supposed to exist. They called us Echo 7 because that's all we were allowed to say if caught. No names, no rank, no chain of command. We moved at night, hiked 4 days through ice and dead radio silence. Johnson lost 2 toes to frostbite. Reyes had a cracked rib by day 2 but kept going. Raymond's hands trembled slightly as they rested on his knees. He stared ahead as if seeing the shapes of mountains still. We breached the compound on night 5. Small, heavily armed, and almost empty. Like they knew we were coming. Whatever was there, it was already gone or buried. We set charges, destroyed everything. But then came the call for extraction. We radioed in. His eyes narrowed. Silence. Dead air. Channel redacted. Our coordinates were no longer valid. Our call signs came back as inactive. Emma whispered, "They cut you off?" He nodded once. "We were ghosts, stripped from every database. They told the press it was a training accident, told our families we were reassigned. No funerals, no honors. Just gone." She hesitated. "How did you survive?" The others scattered. I stayed behind to cover their retreat. When I finally made it out, the only contact I had left was a man named Monroe from logistics, black book clearance. He left me a note in code, "Burn your file, but remember the pact." Emma leaned forward. "What pact?" Raymond smiled faintly. "We made a promise, before pulling out of that frozen hell. If any of us made it out alive, we'd regroup. No radio, no orders, just a single rendezvous every year. Same day, same hour. July 12th, 0200 hours. Location, 29 Svedmien 95 34W. She blinked. "That's here." He tapped his temple lightly. "Close enough." A pause. "I'm the last one left, but the promise still stands. Echo 7 never broke formation, alive or not, and I made them a vow." He looked out the window again, this time not toward memory, but toward hope. "If I'm the last to report in, then I'll be the one to carry their silence, until someone finally listens." The morning of July 11th arrived quietly. Too quietly, Emma thought. The sun filtered through the blinds of the nursing home like any other day, but the air felt heavier, as if it knew something no one else did. That afternoon, Raymond approached the front desk, leaning lightly on his cane. "I'd like to request something," he said, voice calm but firm. Emma looked up, already anticipating his words. "I want to wear my uniform tomorrow," he said. "The real one. The one I earned." There was a pause. Emma glanced at Mr. Winslow's office, empty for now, then nodded. "I'll bring it to your room." She retrieved the suit herself, neatly folded in an old garment bag tucked deep inside the facility's storage unit. The tags were worn. The color had faded, but the medals were still there. Attached by hand, not by vanity. This wasn't ceremony. It was ritual. Raymond took the uniform and ran his fingers over the fabric, pausing at the stitched unit patch. A barely visible echo of the number 7 fused with a falcon's wing. That night, the staff settled in early. Emma stayed behind after shift, claiming paperwork. But her real mission began when she pushed Raymond's wheelchair slowly down the hallway, past the sleeping residents, past the flickering overhead lights, to the door that led to the rooftop terrace, normally locked after dark. "I always wanted to see the sky from up there," he murmured. One last time. The air was cooler than expected. The rooftop was modest, just gravel, a few potted plants, a rusted table, but it felt sacred under the stars. Raymond stood with effort, placing both hands on the terrace railing. Emma stayed beside him, silent. From his coat pocket, he pulled out a small dog tag. But unlike any Emma had seen before, it was matte black, unmarked except for a tiny etched emblem, a triangle with a lightning bolt, and a single word in cursive underneath. Echo. He pressed it to his chest, then tapped it once, twice, a long pause, and one final tap. "Signal protocol," he said softly. "We made it up, just in case one day one of us found a way to listen again." They stood in silence, until suddenly, footsteps, from below, not inside the building, outside. Across the street, under the glow of the street lamp, a man stood alone. Early 60s, tall, sharp posture, wearing a dark civilian coat. Nothing remarkable except the way he stood. Raymond saw him instantly. Their eyes locked. Neither moved, neither waved, neither smiled. And then, the man raised two fingers to his temple and nodded once. Raymond responded in kind. "Who was that?" Emma whispered. Raymond didn't answer right away. His gaze remained on the now empty sidewalk. "Field Recon. Call sign Gray Lantern. He handled comms for us long ago." Emma looked again. No one was there now. "Is he here for you?" she asked. Raymond exhaled. "He's not here for me. He's here because they're listening again." Later that night, back in his room, Raymond carefully laid his uniform jacket on the bed. He polished the buttons with a piece of cloth that looked like it had seen decades of use. He hung the jacket by the window, ready. At 1:52 a.m., Emma found him standing, boots on, dog tag tucked under his collar, hat in hand. She didn't ask where he was going. She just said, "I'll take you to the roof." He looked at her with deep gratitude. "No," he said gently, "this time I'll walk." And he did, step by step, toward whatever was waiting in the sky. It was 1:58 a.m. The world outside the nursing home lay under a heavy velvet sky. The stars were faint, half swallowed by the suburban haze, and the streetlights flickered quietly in the breeze. Inside, most of the staff were winding down their overnight shifts, finishing logs, checking monitors, making rounds in sleepy silence. Then at exactly 2 a.m., the hum began. At first, it was just a faint tremor in the air, barely noticeable over the mechanical hush of fluorescent lights and distant TVs left on for comfort. But within seconds, it grew. The windows began to rattle. Coffee in an unattended mug rippled. Emma, seated at the nurse's station, stood up slowly. She wasn't sure why, but something in her chest told her to move. By 2:01 a.m., the sound was unmistakable. Rotors, heavy, rhythmic, military. Staff members exchanged glances. One of the orderlies rushed to the back windows and peered through the blinds. Guys," he said, voice rising. "Something's coming down, right behind the building." Outside, the soft night erupted with motion. From above the tree line behind the nursing home, a massive black helicopter descended slowly. No markings, no tail number, no agency flag, just matte metal, gleaming faintly under the landing lights that cut harsh, bright cones into the grass. Dust and debris kicked up in a swirling storm as the landing gear touched down on the small, open field behind the facility. The exact coordinates Raymond had repeated for 12 years. Every light in the building flickered. Emergency systems clicked on automatically. Someone screamed. Another called out, "Do we evacuate? Is this a drill?" Emma didn't speak. She was already running. By the time she reached the rooftop, Raymond was already there, standing, back straight, eyes steady, uniform perfectly pressed. He didn't flinch at the wind, didn't blink against the dust. He simply watched as the side door of the helicopter hissed open with hydraulic precision. A tall figure stepped out, not young but strong, with silver at his temples and a chest bearing faded campaign ribbons beneath a worn officer's coat. His boots crunched softly against the dirt as he walked forward through the smoke. He stopped 10 feet from the landing pad, then stood at attention. "Echo 1," he called out, voice steady over the roar. "We're here to bring you home." Raymond raised one hand to his forehead in a sharp, practiced salute. The man returned it. From the rooftop, Emma watched in stunned silence as the impossible unfolded beneath her. Nurses, orderlies, and even some residents in robes and slippers had gathered by the windows. The hallway buzzed with whispering and wide eyes. Not one person spoke aloud. They just watched. As the old soldier descended the stairs for the last time, each step deliberate, unshaken. His metals caught the reflection of the landing lights. His boots never wavered. He walked past the night nurse, who unconsciously moved aside, past the receptionist, frozen with the phone still in her hand, past his room, his medicine, his file marked for psychological review, and out the back door, toward the thrum of memory come alive. As he approached the helicopter, the officer extended his hand. Raymond didn't hesitate. He took it, climbed the step, paused once, only once, to glance back toward the building where he had waited 12 long years. And then he disappeared into the dark belly of the aircraft. The doors sealed. The rotors thundered back to life. And with one final gust of wind and light, the unmarked helicopter lifted off into the night sky, leaving behind only silence and the sound of disbelief. No one at the nursing home spoke for a long time. They didn't need to. They had seen the impossible, and none of them would ever forget the name, Echo 1. The next morning, the halls of Rosefield Nursing Home felt different. Not chaotic, but hollow, like the air itself had been stirred by something no one could explain. Raymond's room was empty, his bed still made, uniform missing. The only thing left behind was a small indentation on the windowsill, as if someone had stood there for a long time, watching the night sky. Emma stood in that room for a while, unsure what to feel. Grief, relief, vindication. Downstairs, word had already spread. The overnight staff couldn't stop whispering. Phones rang. Someone claimed to have heard it on the local police scanner. Another said a neighbor's Ring camera had caught the entire descent of the helicopter. Clear footage, rotor wash and all. But no one had answers. Across town, Marcus Holt, Raymond's nephew, sat in front of his laptop, refreshing the same web page over and over. Military service lookup. No records found. He checked again. Entered Raymond's full name, birth date. Even tried his social security number. Nothing. It was as if his uncle's entire service history had been erased, or had never existed in the first place. Frustrated, he turned to search engines. That's when he saw it. A grainy but unmistakable image. A black helicopter, captured mid-descent, floodlights slicing through darkness. A man in a military uniform standing at attention in front of it. The photo had been uploaded anonymously to a veteran forum, but it had already been shared to Reddit, Twitter, and several conspiracy pages. The caption read, "This just happened behind a nursing home in Texas. No markings, no drills scheduled. Who was this for?" Thousands of comments, hundreds of theories. Some said it was a deep state retrieval. Others joked about aliens. But a few older users caught the detail that mattered. That's a Falcon Wing insignia. Obsolete. Echo Division. "I haven't seen that patch since the '79. You're not supposed to talk about it." By the following afternoon, a reporter from a local news outlet contacted the nursing home. Then a national one. Then radio silence. The Department of Defense, when asked for comment, issued only one line through a spokesperson. "We have no record of any such operation. No confirmation, no denial, just the usual wall of classified indifference." But the story wouldn't go away. 3 days later, Emma found a small, unmarked envelope tucked into her mailbox at home. No return address, no postage. Just her name, written in ink, all uppercase. Inside was a photograph, a black and white print, slightly curled at the edges. 7 men standing in a tight formation, somewhere in a snowy landscape. Gear mismatched, faces grim. No date, no unit name. But Emma recognized the face at the center instantly. Raymond Holt, younger but unmistakable. On the back of the photo, a single handwritten note in careful script. "Thank you for believing. Emma held the picture to her chest, heart pounding. No one else may ever know the truth, but she did. And now maybe, finally, someone had answered Raymond's call. The days following Raymond's departure became a strange kind of reckoning for Rosefield Nursing Home. The building was the same, the routines unchanged, but a current of quiet reverence flowed through the halls, as if everyone walked through the shadow of something far greater than they understood. It began when Mr. Winslow, the facility director, stood before staff and residents during the next community gathering. "We lost someone this week," he said, "but perhaps he was never truly lost." He then unveiled a small brass plaque fixed beside the newly renamed rec room, the Echo Lounge, in honor of Raymond Holt, Echo 1. No one laughed. No one rolled their eyes. Even the most skeptical nurses stood in respectful silence as the engraved words caught the morning light. Shortly after, a local journalist published a column in the community paper. It wasn't front page, it wasn't flashy. Just a small box on page 6, accompanied by a grainy photo of Raymond in uniform. The headline read, "The Old Man Who Was Right." The piece was simple. It described how a helicopter, unmarked, unscheduled, had landed behind a nursing home at exactly 2:00 a.m., on the exact day a quiet veteran had predicted for over a decade. It didn't make bold claims. It didn't have to. It asked a question. How many others like him have been forgotten, dismissed, or labeled delusional, when all they ever carried was the burden of memory? The column went viral. Within days, emails poured into the nursing home, addressed to no one in particular. Veterans from all over the country wrote in, saying things they'd never dared say out loud. "I used to tell people about the cargo plane in '86. They called me paranoid. We had a standing order too. Mine was burned with my file. My father talked about a place called Phantom Hill. We thought he made it up." One note read only, "Echo 3 reporting in. It took me 40 years to believe I wasn't crazy." At Rosefield, the mood had shifted permanently. Residents who had once sat in silence now began to talk, share, recall. A man who hadn't spoken more than 2 sentences in years began sketching diagrams in his oatmeal with a spoon. A woman who was always afraid of helicopters suddenly smiled when one flew overhead. Emma, now unofficially known as the one who believed, became the quiet keeper of these stories. She started recording short interviews with veterans who wanted to talk, just in case history tried to forget them again. They didn't all have endings. Some were fractured, others were unbelievable. But no one laughed anymore. Above the new Echo Lounge plaque, someone had tacked a worn piece of cloth. It was faded and thin, stitched with a broken wing over the number 7. Emma didn't know who had left it there, but she never took it down, because now when staff walked through those halls and saw that symbol, they no longer thought of delusion. They thought of duty, of memory, of one man who waited until someone finally listened. Raymond Holt never returned. No official paperwork ever followed, no discharge, no obituary, no calls from the military or the government. It was as if he had vanished into the very shadows he spoke of, erased not by age or illness, but by design. His room at Rosefield was cleared quietly. The staff didn't fill it right away. For weeks it remained untouched, like a shrine without explanation. No one quite knew what to say. No one dared call it closure. But something strange began to happen. Every year on the same date, July 12th, the staff would hear it before they saw it. At exactly 2:00 a.m., a low thrum of rotor blades would echo through the dark sky above the nursing home. No spotlights, no tail markings, no announcements. Just a sleek black silhouette sliding silently above the roofline and then disappearing into the night. It never landed, never circled twice, just passed overhead, once, precisely. Every year. The first year people called it a coincidence, a military training route, an odd but explainable occurrence. But after the second year, then the third, it became something else. By the 5th year, residents would sit by the windows in silence, waiting. Some even stood in salute. And Emma? She never missed a year. Each July 12th, just before 2 a.m., she would climb the stairs to the rooftop and stand beneath the open sky, same place where Raymond had once waited. She never brought anyone with her. She never filmed. She never explained. When the faint rumble came and the shadow crossed above her, she would place a hand over her heart and whisper only one thing: Echo 1, acknowledged. And in that moment, wherever he had gone, Raymond Holt was not forgotten. He was not a ghost. He was still reporting in. In today's fast-paced world, we scroll past faces like Raymond Holt's every day. Quiet elders sitting alone on benches in coffee shops or in nursing homes. We assume they're simply lost in thought or maybe no longer all there. But what if they're carrying stories no history book ever wrote? Raymond's story reminds us of something deeply American: duty, silence, and the quiet resilience of those who served and were forgotten. He didn't need attention. He didn't shout his truth. He simply waited for someone to believe him. In a time where so much noise fills our lives, Raymond teaches us the value of listening, really listening, to those whose time is short, but whose stories still matter. What other Echo Ones are out there, waiting for acknowledgement? How many of us have overlooked a veteran neighbor, a grandparent, or even a stranger with eyes that have seen too much? We hope Raymond's journey sparks something in you. Not just curiosity, but compassion. A moment to slow down, to ask questions, to honor those whose battles didn't end when the war did. If this story moved you, please comment below. Have you ever known someone like Raymond? Do you believe some veterans were deliberately erased from the records? What does Echo 1 acknowledge mean to you? We'd love to hear your thoughts, especially from our older viewers. Your experiences matter. And if you believe stories like Raymond's deserve to be told, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who still believes in quiet heroes. Because some stories may be forgotten by the world, but not by those who choose to remember. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next story.